Dear Indian friends, Italy is in lockdown. The steps taken are rigorous and intended to prevent the disease from further expanding.
The first cases of the coronavirus were identified in China's Wuhan district in December 2019. This triggered the World Health Organization to send out a warning of a possible global infection. Like other countries who were hard hit by COVID-19, despite Italy's best efforts, the virus, true to its character, had spread beyond its shores. An Italian doctor from Codogno in northern Italy that had become the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in Europe was part of a tourist group of 20-odd people traveling in Rajasthan, India, and was reported to be COVID positive.
And that's when, we turned into emergency mode.
For the Embassy of Italy in New Delhi, whose regular course of work is to facilitate, develop and promote bilateral economic and cultural relations in India, it was now hit with a crisis that its diplomats had never dealt with before.
All of a sudden, we realized that it was then up to us, and we were on the front line, and 1 minute earlier, we didn't know that.
And within days of the World Health Organization declaring COVID-19 as a global pandemic, India also announced a complete national lockdown from the 24th of March.
There were like 2 hours where you were allowed to go on the street. So during those 2 hours was a run against the time to find something to eat for the whole day. We had a lot of tension for the whole COVID situation, and we were scared of not having the possibility to go back home.
Around 2,000 such Italians stranded in a foreign nation that had gone into complete closure.
We had to cope with this gigantic difficulty. There were no means to go back to Italy. You couldn't travel by road if you didn't have a permit.
And of course, this meant to strengthen and develop, connection at all levels with the Indian government, of course, first and foremost, Ministry of External Affairs, which helped us from the very first moment till the end.
Follow this team as they are faced with a huge task of facilitating their biggest evacuation exercise, with the challenge of providing active support to their nationals across the length and breadth of India, from ashrams in the hills to the shores of Goa and Kerala, to interior historical locations. All this amidst a worldwide medical emergency and sealed borders. Art, film, music, dance, food, and wine. All things quintessential to both Italian and Indian culture. The calendar of the diplomatic mission of Italy to India was all planned out. Chock-a-block and a buzz with activity. The enthusiasm and energy of the new year was palpable. Vincenzo De Luca, ambassador of Italy to India, had just taken charge.
We had different activities planned, business forums, cultural events at the Italian Cultural Center, beautiful parties on the occasion of big manifestations such as the Indian Art Fair, and that happened in January. It was a massive party.
A celebration of alter-modern art. Visions in the Making, a month-long art exhibition co-hosted by the Italian Embassy Cultural Center and India Art Fair. A project seeking to create a space of mutual inquiry, transformation, and translation between cultures through creative dialogue and exchange of ideas. Efforts towards creative collaboration continued in full swing with the presentation of the cultural program in early February.
On that occasion, for example, we had a delegation coming from Italy that was guided by Roberto Stabile. He's the president of ANICA, which is the Federation of Cinematographers in Italy, because we had a whole cinema plan that we wanted to develop. We were planning to have a big delegation in Mumbai on the occasion of FICCI Frames 2020. And we worked a lot to make that happen.
From culture to entertainment and down to business. The embassy and its diplomats had their work cut out, with busy days ahead.
I wish to extend a special note of gratitude to all the entrepreneurs who flew in today specifically for this joint meeting. This is a very important sign for us. Thank you so much. Italy doesn't stop in India. Italy doesn't stop all over the world.
India is demonstrating a huge amount of energy, vibrancy, and dynamism in its startup movement. We have over 30,000 startups, and they are disrupting India in a manner which the world has not seen before.
And in bringing these two countries together to exchange what each has to offer, Invest India, the agency at the forefront of monitoring and facilitating bilateral relations, had a detailed agenda drawn out, shared at the Italy in India Business Conclave.
There were a lot of high-level engagements planned between our heads of state. We had a series of roadshows that were planned, physical ones in Italy to tap into different industrial towns and districts over there.
The mood was positive and upbeat, with a multitude of engagements planned. And amidst all the networking events, business delegations, and hectic schedules, the team made time for internal celebrations as well.
I'm a leap year baby, so I was born on February 29th. And I can assure you that I was so undecided to do a birthday party that year. But at the end, I decided to throw it because they said, you know, it comes around once every 4 years. Why not celebrate? The next morning, I was on duty that weekend, emergency duty. So the next morning at 7:15 a.m., the phone rang. The service phone rang. I was like, that's weird. So I picked it up, and it was an Italian national, Mrs. Pinuccia Lombardi, and she basically introduced herself saying, hi, my husband is a doctor at the Codogno hospital, and unfortunately he fell ill, and we had to admit him to the Jaipur hospital because of respiratory problems. We were just learning from the Italian media that the COVID was outbreaking in Italy, and the hotspot was in northern Italy, and Codogno was actually the hospital where we discovered patient number 0. I thought, oh my gosh, it's an Italian citizen that has COVID in India. And that's when, yes, we turned into emergency mode. From that moment on, we were, taking care of this person that was in the hospital, but also the rest of the group that was traveling with them, because also they were exposed to the virus.
A virus that forced the world to retreat and stay indoors. A virus that paralyzed links between countries and disrupted economic activity. A virus so difficult to comprehend that it put the diplomats out of their depth. And with that, the build-up to an eventful year at the Embassy of Italy came to a grinding halt. The diplomatic mission was instead thrown to the front lines of handling what was possibly one of the biggest challenges of their careers, the magnitude of which they were yet to fully understand.
1.3 miliardi di abitanti. Ai tempi del coronavirus.
Nations across the globe were getting into action. Italy, that was hard hit by the first wave of the coronavirus in Europe, had already gone into a complete lockdown to contain the spread. Back in India, the southern state of Kerala had reported the initial few cases of the coronavirus by late January. In the north, after the Italian doctor from Codogno, Andrea Carli, was hospitalized with COVID-19 in Jaipur, Rajasthan, 14 Italian nationals from his travel group tested positive as well. The Embassy of Italy in New Delhi was quick to respond and react.
Since the detection of some Italian tourists tested positive to coronavirus, we set up a task force at the Embassy of Italy in Delhi that has been working hard with the Indian authorities in assisting our national.
We immediately had the perception that this was a huge challenge, one of the biggest challenge most likely of our career.
With no time to lose, the task force had to instantly jump into action.
So we had to start structuring a strategy around something we didn't know, actually, and we weren't apparently ready to face. But then when you are under emergency, you always find the strength and the energies to see things and to understand how to better tackle these kind of issues. So we immediately contacted the right people in the government here in India, hospitals, structures, and we followed very closely the evolution of this one single patient that was COVID positive in Jaipur.
I had to call on one by one the 22 Italians spotted in Rajasthan live on a phone where they were regrouped and waiting for my voice of who was the one tested positive and who was the one tested negative, which meant, of course, that two groups had to be set up immediately. Those entitled to go back to Italy and repatriate, and those that had to be quarantined in a military camp that at that time the Indian government had somehow dedicated to these very first few cases of COVID, since it was not still even well known what kind of infection COVID was.
11 tourists out of the group fortunately tested negative and were brought back to the capital, New Delhi. The special task force took the decision to evacuate them immediately. On the evening of March 4th, an Etihad flight departing from New Delhi via Abu Dhabi to Milan transported the healthy members of the much-reported Italian travel group safely back home.
And I remember I took them to the airport that evening, and it was quite incredible because I remember that was the first time I put a mask in my entire life. I mean, knowing that it was a mask not for pollution, but it was a mask to avoid being infected by something that we were starting to know in that precise moment.
That moment where Alessandro was at the airport and he communicated with ambassador and all of us. We were all in the same room, and it was like, kind of missions that you somehow follow and watch on movies, in the sense that I'm going there, I keep there, they are okay. No, wait, no, this is now a new control, new check. But it was very, very emotional in a sense that it was unknown.
Within days, the World Health Organization attempted to demystify some of the unknowns around the virus that was circulating across continents. On March 11, 2020, the WHO declared COVID-19 a global pandemic.
In the days and weeks ahead, we expect to see the number of cases, the number of deaths, and the number of affected countries climb even higher. We have rung the alarm bell loud and clear.
Given this clarity on the extent of the coronavirus threat, the diplomats at the Italian embassy in India were in no position to let their guard down. The fatality of the contagion hit home and hit hard when the first Italian tourist, aged 69, who had tested positive in Rajasthan, passed away with a massive heart attack.
That was something that, hit me strongly because we had just, celebrated the fact that he had become negative from COVID. It was so early on in the pandemic that, science was not up to date yet. And now we know that there are major complications from COVID even after you had COVID. It was crazy. We had to then get the body back to Delhi in order to take it home, and taking care also of his wife wasn't an easy task.
The Special Task Force was now fully aware of the daunting mission ahead of them. Their next step was to promptly get an estimate of how many Italian nationals were currently in India, track down the unregistered ones, ensure their health and safety, and repatriate them to their home country. On March 21st, an Air India flight with 128 Italian nationals departed from New Delhi to Rome. This would be the last commercial flight for the next 2 months. And while the diplomats were dealing with the task at hand, India announced a complete shutdown for 3 weeks. In the words of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, every state, every district, every lane, every village will be under total lockdown.
The problem was suddenly, let's say, exacerbated by the lockdown. This made the transportation issue suddenly the most important and the most challenging issue we had to face.
In a quiet meditative ashram of Rishikesh in India's northern state of Uttarakhand, located in the Himalayan foothills beside the Ganges River, Italian tourists Cristiano Monti and Margherita Vuzzo were not prepared for what was about to hit them. The young travelers from an island town in Italy had arrived in India on the 17th of January with a cross-country itinerary.
Our plans was to stay in India about 3-4 months. We landed in Kochi in the south. We visited most of the state of Kerala.
Yeah.
We've been there for 1 month, I think. And then we started to go up by train and by bus. We went to Hampi, to Goa and Mumbai. Then India, is too big. So from there we decided to take a flight to Varanasi.
And we moved to Agra to see the Taj Mahal, and then to Jaipur, Jaisalmer, Jodhpur. So we could have like a small tour of the most beautiful cities in
Rajasthan.
In Rajasthan, yeah. And then like the last stop for our travel was Rishikesh, because obviously like we knew that Rishikesh was a really peaceful place, good for meditation and yoga. So we wanted to spend there at least a couple of weeks before returning to Italy.
But the last leg of their journey was cut short. It now turned from a relaxed vacation to a rush to get out of a foreign nation.
We were a little bit like scared of what was going on, because obviously it was a new situation for all of us. We started to worry a little bit when we had the first day of lockdown.
Yeah, when they start to cancel our flight, train, bus, everything, we couldn't move from there.
Yeah, the first 3 days of the lockdown, while we were in the ashram, we basically just had biscuits. We were asking people on the street to boil some eggs, because we were like 2 hours where you were allowed to go on the street. So during those 2 hours was a run against the time to find something to eat for the whole day. So we had a lot of tension for the whole COVID situation, and we were scared of not having the possibility to go back home.
Back at the Italian embassy, operations and efforts were on at a frenzied pace to reach out to their nationals. The government of India had by now suspended all international flights.
So we had to track everybody down. Was given the task to actually compile the list of the nationals and where they were located, like the exact address where they were, because then we set up a whole operation that had to go and pick them up with buses. So we had to know exactly where they were staying, the hotels or the B&Bs. And I have to say, it was a massive operation that really brought everybody together, working only on that. We had, a hotline, an email that our nationals could refer to signal their presence in India, or also on social media. We had the Facebook comments that were, over flooding with people acknowledging their presence. At a certain point, we asked them to fill out a form, a Google form, and that came out really in handy because you had the picture of everyone and you were able to track them down.
Meanwhile, a silent stigma had also started to creep in. Along with restrictions on movement, transport, commerce, and limited access to essential goods, accommodation and services for Italian nationals became a matter of concern.
The first time that we spoke with the embassy was 2-3 weeks before when we were in Jodhpur, because I remember a flight come from Italy.
Yeah.
There was, I think, 10-15 Italian people positive to the coronavirus.
Yeah.
So from there, in Rajasthan, the owners of the accommodation didn't allow Italian people. So from there we start to call the embassy, and we had the number of Pietro Sferacarini, which was really helpful. And in meantime, we decided to go to Rishikesh because in Rajasthan the situation was a little bit harder.
One of the most difficult things that we had to deal with was basically trying to put out the message that it was in Italy that brought COVID to India, because unfortunately they were the first COVID cases in India, and that made it to the news.
This changed very much the perspective. When I was meeting anybody, my first week or two, everybody was like, "Oh, you come from Italy, how lovely, how beautiful." Then the second, third week was, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you're from Italy." And then it became, "Oh my God, coronavirus." And then it actually turned into rage.
So my job as press officer at the embassy was a little bit to mitigate that stigma.
Despite the overwhelming challenges, each member of the task force remained dedicated to working relentlessly around the clock.
I had to mainly coordinate, identify companies that could organize special flights to come to India, and take care of all the authorizations for that flights to fly in India. Not to mention the fact that being special flights, tickets had to be issued directly by us as an embassy.
But having a flight ticket in hand meant nothing in the early days of the strict lockdown imposed in India.
You couldn't travel by road if you didn't have a permit. So even if Italian tourists had a plane ticket or were ready to leave, they couldn't reach main towns in India in order to reach then Delhi or Bangalore or Goa so that they could take that flight. So we had to organize an incredible machine of logistical machine together with a private agency here in India that found all cars that we had to request an authorization for, each one of them. This could happen also in very remote areas of the country with hours and hours of travel, and every time these cars or buses had to cross one state to the other in India, they were facing the risk of being stopped because, as you remember, all states were like in total lockdown. So we needed a 24 hours a day structure capable of coordinating that incredible logistical machine that we built.
And once this logistical machine was set in motion, the team worked tirelessly toward organizing a series of repatriation flights for its Italian nationals who were spread across the length and breadth of India.
We worked days and nights. We became tireless machines, ready to go out of our way to help people to reunite with their families in Italy.
The difficult thing was that basically there were no flights from Kolkata or from Odisha or the other states I was responsible for, that were also the 7 states in the northeast. So people would have to get to Delhi to get one of the very few flights that were still operational. The problem was to get to Delhi because internal borders were closed, so we had to have ad hoc authorization for each person, and also organize this super long commuting through cars or through buses, through other means, for the people to move to Delhi. I can't imagine what the embassy had to deal with to have to manage all these Italians.
There were at that point, early March, mid of March, around 2,000, more than 2,000 Italians in India. And of course, this meant to strengthen and develop, connection at all levels with our Consul General in Mumbai and Kolkata, with Rome, with our crisis unit, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the Indian government, of course, first and foremost, Ministry of External Affairs, which helped us from the very first moment till the end.
And in turn, the Italian embassy in Delhi did everything to assist their nationals in the country.
We kept contact with the embassy, and that's when Mr. Pietro told us about this special bus arranged for Italian people from Rishikesh to Delhi. But the process was quite long.
Because during the curfew, during the lockdown, we were not allowed to go out from the ashram. So we went to the police to ask permission to go there. The first time I remember was on 25 of March, was my birthday. And Pietro contacted me to say, look, there is the bus at 3 o'clock in the night. But at that time was impossible to reach the bus. So they changed
the time
in the morning, I think 10 o'clock in the morning.
On the next day.
Yeah. On the next day, yeah.
We reached the New Delhi embassy, and we spent there I think was 5 or 6 hours while the people working at the embassy were dealing with sorting out all the flight tickets. They said look, everything is closed at the moment. There's no restaurant, no bar, because obviously India was there was nothing on the street. So they said, look, we don't have much here in the embassy, but we can give you some biscuits, some fruits. So in the meantime, you can eat something, because obviously for us was so hard to eat as well during those days.
Their ordeal was soon coming to an end. All the arrangements had been made and planned out in detail for the first fully organized flight by the Embassy of Italy.
Together with my colleague Alex, we went to the cultural center where some of them were staying for a few hours before going to the airport to board the flight, because we had an interaction. We were able to meet face to face, talk to each other, exchange experience. And that was a moment where there was a bond between the Italian nationals and the embassy staff, that we were all together in this. What I recall from that night is that the bus that left the cultural center to the airport carrying roughly 45 Italian nationals made this route from the embassy to the airport in a city that was completely empty. And I was at the head of this small convoy driving my car, and I remember all the lights being turned off, the NH48 going from Delhi to the airport. It was completely empty. It was just my car and the bus following me. And that was somehow shocking, because it was really literally the way to feel how the lockdown was affecting our lives.
For the Italian nationals, the countdown to finally getting on a plane back home had begun. The usual hustle and bustle of the airport was replaced with fairly empty aisles and passageways. Check-in and security clearance were a smooth process. The mood was somber but eager at the same time.
We were at the departure hall, right outside the departure hall, and we saw this figure walking towards the departure hall, and it was a man carrying a suitcase. It was an Italian national who had walked some 8 kilometers maybe from the hotel by himself, because he couldn't find means of transportation. For some reason, he wasn't able to reach us, so he decided to walk. And we met him at the airport.
With everyone finally on board the aircraft, it was time to heave a sigh of relief for both its passengers and the team that had determinedly worked towards setting up the flight. But moments before takeoff, the relief turned into panic.
Alex called me from the embassy. We had set up a small operational center in Alex's office where Alex and the ambassador were coordinating our activities. Alex told me that there was this code missing without which the airplane could not take off.
So close and yet so far. A crucial YA code required for flight takeoff was missing. This sent the diplomats scrambling in the wee hours of the morning. Would this special flight to Rome take off as planned? At 3 a.m. on the 27th of March, Alitalia flight number AZ769 with 212 Italian passengers on board waited on the tarmac of New Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport.
They couldn't really wait to take off and go back to Italy, and they didn't understand what was going on. We needed to go to the control tower of the airport and meet somebody from the DGCA. And so we met our driver, Ratan, who had one of the pieces of papers that were needed. And together we went to the control tower. Fortunately, everything went well. The ambassador managed to call people, Alex managed to call people, and we got the code. It was a great moment of satisfaction, because without that code, the whole operation would be jeopardized.
Saved from jeopardy and on their way back home, it was a moment of mixed feelings, relief and bittersweet memories for Cristiano and Maria Rita.
I wasn't so happy to go back home because India was one of the best experience in our life, and for sure we will go back there.
We had like a bitter sour feeling, but like obviously the help of the embassy was so important for us, and like we're really thankful for that. We're really grateful.
I think it was the best choice to take the first flight to go back to Rome at that moment.
And with the first fully organized flight by the Embassy of Italy taking to the skies, it was in a sense the culmination of the diplomatic mission's mammoth effort in orchestrating the complex process of repatriation. For the Special Task Force, it was now a matter of keeping this logistical machine they had built well-oiled. Within a week, the next flight out was arranged by the Embassy of Italy in New Delhi, coordinated by the Consulate General of Italy in Mumbai. This time an Alitalia flight from Goa to Rome with not only 126 Italians on board, but also a few Belgian, Dutch, Maltese and French nationals. The evacuation process from India now followed a good operational system. But tracking down and repatriating Italian travelers stranded in the neighboring country of Nepal had to be approached in a very tactful manner, a concern that led to many sleepless nights.
Nepal was my main nightmare in a way those days, because the consulate in Kolkata is responsible also, at least consular on the consular point of view, for Nepal. And in Nepal you have very special kind of tourists. They are mostly trekkers, and they embark in these very long treks of 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, in which they move from one peak, one valley to the other. Those tourists, usually young ones, they were sometimes traveling with no phone, with no really connection, because they wanted to disconnect, and they were having like a 1 month trek in the mountains. And then one day they would pop out in some remote valley peak in Himalaya and realized that they were in the middle of a pandemic and they didn't know about it, and they wanted to come back to Italy, or they basically wanted information. The embassy in Delhi, but also the European delegation in Kathmandu, they wanted an updated list of Italians who wanted to go, where do they want to go, where they come from. But those lists were very difficult to keep updated, because every day or every other day some new Italians would pop out from a new location. And then we had to start thinking of how to repatriate them. And because Nepal is difficult to reach, it's difficult to share the flight with another destination, and it's high in the mountains, and also pilots need special qualification and special license to fly there.
And while the diplomats went the extra mile to manage the anxiety of their nationals and ensure their safe return home, they too had to deal with matters of the heart.
I found myself in a very strange dimension, I have to say, because I had my family back in Italy, 3 kids that were in total lockdown because at that time the situation in Italy was really terrible. So I remember that I had to manage in parallel also well-being, let's say, of my kids living all together under the same roof, but experiencing tough moments. And I had to do that without being able to go there and stay with them. So I always used to say that I probably didn't manage to take care of my kids as much as I have managed to take care of a lot of Italian nationals here.
Here in India, artists, musicians, and the cultural community stood strong in solidarity with Italy, a true testament of friendship in these challenging times.
I stand in solidarity with the people of Italy, and I hope this too shall pass. Let us resolve to stay united and help each other send positive energy through music, which I believe is a universal language of brotherhood and harmony.
With a fresh drive to transition into a new world and explore new dimensions, the members of the task force juggled multiple hats.
The first urgent issue that we had to address was, of course, the evacuation and repatriation to our nationals to Italy. But once this problem was solved, we could actually focus our action over 3 important areas. The first area was to address the critical shortage of PPE, which is masks and protective equipment, and of course of critical pharmaceutical supplies that were badly needed in Italy. And we organized to this end, thanks to the cooperation of the Indian authorities, several shipments of those to Italy. Then the second action was to cater directly to the needs of the Italian business community set in India.
Work had to carry on. But the world had changed amidst the pandemic. It was time for digital diplomacy.
Together with the ambassador, we immediately understood that we have to shift all of our activities, both economic and cultural activities, but also the relations with the nationals and consular affairs on the digital modality.
So we set up a new room in the embassy with very sophisticated IT, setting with screens and mics and backgrounds. And everything that was going on basically in a sort of a TV studio.
The first move was to ensure the well-being of Italian companies operating in India.
We decided to establish a real task force, teaming up officials from the Trade Department of the Italian Embassy, from the Italian Trade Agency, and also from the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce.
An online business conclave was held to understand the challenges faced by them and provide crucial service and financial tools to tackle immediate issues.
It was a way for us to communicate with companies, Italian companies in India that were facing a large number of problems that were the consequence of the lockdown.
We tried to maintain a constant communication link with the Italian business community set in India by organizing a series of webinars instrumental to explain to the Italian business community set in India the tools that were made available by the Italian government to help small and medium enterprises to weather the pandemic, and also to give them some financial tools and liquidity.
What Invest India had done was we had launched this business immunity platform for continuity of businesses to help them resolve issues that companies are facing in India.
We could always count on the excellent cooperation with the Indian authorities, and in particular with Invest India. They never let us down, and they provided us with great support throughout all the COVID crisis.
Meanwhile, the evacuation exercise of Italian nationals from India continued. On April 21st, an Alitalia flight transported 86 Italians and 80 other European citizens from Bangalore to Rome. Within a month, another flight operated by Italian airline Nicosia was arranged. On May 20th, 22 Italians returned to their country from Goa in India. Despite all their duties, the diplomats also pulled off a well-put-together digital affair on the 2nd of June, the Italian National Day, which is otherwise widely celebrated across Italy and its embassies overseas as a day filled with parades, fireworks, concerts and picnics. This was a special year, and the virtual event was celebrated with an e-talk between the ambassador and historian professor Alessandro Barbero, followed by a lively rendition of the Italian national anthem. Over the next few days, 3 special flights operated by Italian airline Nicosia were arranged from Mumbai and Delhi, taking a total of 149 countrymen back to their homeland. Back in the office, the next key event was the launch of the first ever permanent digital bilateral platform of joint economic partnership, an initiative to strengthen bilateral ties and form new commercial linkages between the two countries, leveraging innovation and technology.
The Italian embassy in New Delhi is pioneering digital diplomacy, becoming the first digital embassy of our network. It is no surprise that such a thrilling experiment is taking place in India, a subcontinent offering a conducive environment for innovation and hosting a thriving IT and startup ecosystem. Italy and India can shape together their digital future, multiplying growth opportunities for companies of both countries, sharing knowledge, building bridges, and bridging gaps.
So this digital bilateral platform played a very important role in eliciting and supporting the business interests of Italian companies who are looking at India as a market opportunity and to diversify the supply chains. So it's actually been one of the best practices that we have followed in the pandemic year.
Prior to the pandemic in early 2020, the Embassy of Italy had announced their country's partnership in the 5-day FICCI Frames event, Asia's largest convention on the business of entertainment, with the aim to set up co-productions, sell films and bring Indian productions to Italy to promote its shooting destinations and take advantage of fiscal incentives. But like all other events, the diplomats took up the challenge to transform this partnership into a virtual avatar.
Challenging, but at the same time, I have to say it was much more productive.
With the new digital agenda gathering steam, the first initiative under the bilateral platform was a 2-day Indo-Italian business mission on food processing, which saw virtual conferences, trade fairs, B2B meetings, and webinars on Italy's expertise in food packaging and processing technologies, and how India can become one of the biggest markets for this sector.
As an outcome of this digital mission on food, Italy also announced its first ever mega food park project in India. And there was an MOU with the Embassy of Italy, the Italian Trade Agency, SACE, and the Emilia-Romagna region. So, this MOU came together as an Italian excellence platform, and it will offer technical training, skill building, etc., just in the area of mega food parks in India.
Digital diplomacy was bearing fruit, and given that the virus had forced all activities to go virtual, it was but natural to also hold a digital event to share experiences on tackling COVID-19. Top representatives of the Ministries of Health from Italy and India took stock of the current situation, discussed the measures taken to contain the virus, touched upon research for vaccination, and illustrated the possibilities of future scientific projects together. Taking bilateral relations a notch higher, within a week, a virtual summit was held between the Prime Ministers of Italy and India. A joint declaration and action plan to reinforce ties was outlined. The two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to strengthen cooperation against common global challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic. And 15 economic agreements in various sectors such as energy, fisheries, shipbuilding and design were signed on the sidelines of the summit. And with this transition to a new normal world, the key element of food could not be left out.
Welcome to the 5th edition of the Italian Cuisine Week in India.
Do you really believe we would have forgotten you just because it's 2020?
This year, we decided to invite you to your homes for a home-cooked meal, exactly like Indians and Italians have been doing for the past 8 months.
So, why don't you follow us for an exquisite set of digital gastronomic events?
Keeping with the year's theme on home cooking, a mini-series featuring Italian and Indian grandmothers and young chefs revisiting traditional dishes in a contemporary way was planned. A string of interactive video recipes and guides, right from how to set up a table for a genuine Italian meal to conversations around the future of food at home, followed. The highlight of the week was the preparation of the non-gala dinner, a competition to reward the best spaghetti al pomodoro in partnership with celebrity chef Ritu Dalmia and Gambero Rosso. And while all of this may sound very appetizing, pulling off this week-long love affair for Italian food was no mean feat.
C's idea was that we need every person who would have come for this dinner, if it would happen in real life, to experience the same format, the same flavors, but sitting at their homes virtually. I thought there was no way they're going to be able to pull it off. So, step one, getting the recipe in, getting Gambero Rosso to bring in the video.
And I will add the tomato directly inside the saucepan.
Step two, how are we going to do the kits? And how are you going to make sure that it reaches everywhere else? But thanks to Alessandro and Isabella and everyone at the embassy, they managed to do it. Keeping two things in mind. Number one, it has to travel, so it cannot go bad. And number two, it has to be simple. So you had your little tomato can, you had your olive oil, you had a pasta packet, you had the parmesan, and basil you could pick from your own garden. So these kits were prepared. Then they were transported to all the people across the country. Third came the actual event, which was a virtual event where they had to see the recipe sent by the Gambero Rosso chef and cook it, send their pictures. Then all the pictures were collected. Based on that, a finalist dinner happened at the embassy where 2 or 3 of them came, all with social distancing, cooked the pasta, and the winner, I think, got a flight from Alitalia. They got a trip to Italy.
Long story short, I made the spaghetti al pomodoro. It turned out to be pretty good, and I won. Now, the experience of cooking it for judges, meeting my fellow contestants, and just cooking a dish was nothing short of amazing. And ever since, I've been doing a lot of research about Italy, and I can't wait to visit Italy to experience La Dolce Vita. I would also like to thank everybody at the Embassy of Italy in India who year after year come up with fabulous events, very memorable events, and especially for last year because they were able to make it extra memorable for me.
What was so amazing about the Spaghetti al Pomodoro event was what was logistically a nightmare and what one thought was impossibility made sure that all these people actually enjoyed an authentic Italian recipe at home. It was really a fabulous event.
And with that, the diplomats managed to end the calendar year on an eventful positive note. All this along with the special task force on the COVID emergency actively repatriating their nationals. In the course of 5 months from March to July 2020, the Italian Embassy in New Delhi organized 7 special evacuation flights from India. Year 2021, meant to be a year of hope, recovery and survival, but in a new normal world. Many countries had developed and launched vaccines against the coronavirus. With things limping back to normalcy and countries cautiously reopening their borders, The Embassy of Italy in New Delhi hosted its first physical event since the outbreak of the pandemic. The launch of the Festival of Italian Culture in India was a well-attended one, done in full compliance with health and safety protocols. The cultural festival was inaugurated in the presence of the Indian Minister of Foreign Affairs, S. Jaishankar. This was a big boost to Italy's soft power and its reach in India. A rich cultural program to showcase the best of Italian cinema, literature, art, fashion and food. A pizza night to celebrate the art of making Neapolitan pizza followed. And who doesn't love a good slice of traditional Italian pizza? One that has a spot on the 2017 UNESCO list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Next, it was time for some creative food for the soul. Italian cinema under the sky. A 3-day screening of some rare, noteworthy Italian films. The opening night showcased 2 documentaries made by master Italian filmmakers based on India. Notes for a Film on India and India Through Rossellini's Eyes, made back in 1959. Weeks later, in current-day India, the situation with the COVID-19 virus that had seemed under control at the start of the new year had taken a turn for the worse. The international community was quick to come to India's aid. The European Union, through its Civil Protection Coordination Mechanism, donated €102 million to the country, and Italy played its part. In a statement made by Prime Minister Mario Draghi on the Italian mission of medical support to India, he said,
"I wish to express my solidarity to the people of India for the suffering caused by the new wave of the pandemic. Italy will not miss supporting at this time of distress. Through our Civil Protection Department, we are sending an oxygen production system made available by the Piedmont region for supplies to a traditional hospital. A team of specialized personnel is also being sent to set up and ensure operation of the equipment."
So India was very close to Italy when Italy was in a bad situation in COVID terms. And now it's our time to give it back to India. So what we are doing is we are setting up COVID relief flights, transporting material that was required by the government of India, mainly 2 kinds of items, either machines related to the production and supply of oxygen to patients. So ventilators, oxygen plants, concentrators, cylinders, or antiviral medicines that are used to cure COVID patients.
On the 3rd of May, the much-anticipated flight with the Italian medical team and relief equipment landed in India. A critical oxygen production machine capable of supplying an entire hospital and 20 lung respirators were unloaded. Preparation for the installation of the oxygen production plant began the very next day. The ITBP hospital in Greater Noida in the state of Uttar Pradesh was identified as the beneficiary, and within 3 days the specialized team from Italy had it up and running, set up for operations.
Incredible how things can change in life. This documentary we were working on was supposed to be on an Italian perspective exclusively, and with a final positive note of how we have managed to transform the crisis into an opportunity. But now we have to add a last part of the documentary, which is a very sad part of how the COVID crisis has impacted India. But since we are always ready to find positive aspects of whatever kind of situation, what we are going to do in a few minutes is an extremely important sign of solidarity that Italy has put in place for our Indian friends in order to provide them with what they're needing, oxygen, and expertise in producing that oxygen.
We are going to the Noida hospital, where after only 2 days the oxygen production machine provided by the Italian civil protection is already start to work, and I have to really emphasize the effectiveness of our civil protection team and of our Italian technology that is now very important for India in this very difficult crisis. Good afternoon.
On 6th May 2021, the oxygen production plant donated by Italy to India in support of the coronavirus emergency was officially activated.
We provide Italian oxygen and help to India in this very difficult crisis.
It can produce about 62,000 liters of oxygen per hour. That is enough for more than 100 patients.
We also did a short training on lung ultrasound, and we shared some protocols on how to treat COVID patients.
I extend my gratitude to Italian government for extending this help to our hospital, and we are really grateful to this marvelous team.
This aid went a long way in allowing the hospital to be self-sufficient without having to rely on external supplies anymore.
We have given back to this hospital what they gave us when a group of Italian tourists last year, first wave of COVID in Italy, were hospitalized when some of them were affected by COVID. Really exciting and really touching. Thank you. It was time to give back, and we gave back.
True to the long-standing cooperation between the two countries, Italy's medical assistance to India continued with more flights.
We are in Delhi International Airport, gate number 10, which is the gate that is used for COVID relief flights by foreign countries who are helping India in this time of struggle. Together with my colleague and friend Alex, we are going to the tarmac to welcome the second relief flight coming from Italy today. It will be operated by the Guardia di Finanza.
This second aid flight, an ATR-42 of the Italian Finance Guard, a militarized police force, brought in a new consignment. The material included 30 oxygen concentrators, 2 lung ventilators, 2 ultrasound scanners, and 212,000 masks. With the material unloaded, it was now time for the members of the Italian Civil Protection Team, who had arrived 10 days earlier with a mandate to install an oxygen production system in the Greater Noida Hospital and train local operators, to return home. It was a job well done in a short period of time and much appreciated.
Anche questa volta mission accomplished.
This experience is teaching us that health is the most important global public good. Universal health is becoming a widespread challenge, and there is no alternative to international solidarity and collaboration to tackle global issue. Let's stay united to fight this global challenge. Italy is doing its part.
At the subdivisional hospital in Bolpo, in the central part of the state of West Bengal. In the hospital, the oxygen concentrators and the other medical equipment sent from Italy have been deployed. This is one of 3 different hospitals, the other 2 being in the North 24 Parganas districts, which have been gifted by these Italian people, private individuals, organized and put together by the association called Insieme per Mano.
I'm a music producer and composer. I publish music under the name And Love Turned Black. Last year, 2020, I was traveling in India as I do since 2002. So we were stuck in a small village on the seaside and the west coast of India. We needed to ask support to the Italian Embassy of India, and they actually did everything they could. On a human level, Pietro and Alessandro were just great. So I thought to compose a piece for you.